Welcome to Leadership and Life Chat with your hosts, me, Becky Ames.
And me, Mark Curtis. In each episode, we'll be illustrating how success in leadership is inextricably linked with success in life.
Whether it's leadership in business, society, family or friends, we're all leaders.
Using our experiences and a range of expert guests, we'll share secrets to boosting your health, wealth and self.
So let's get on with the show. Mark, this morning when I got into the office, I was looking through my emails and I get a lot of those daily reminders, inspirational messages, and I really like them. They work for me. And today's was brilliant. Monday morning, Dolly Parton. Find out who you are and do it on purpose. And I loved that. And I thought, that's such a great thing that we could talk around, because if we don't know what we're about and we're not actively living like that, then how can we ever hope to influence others, drive our business forward and really, achieve the things we want to achieve? And it comes down to values, doesn't it? So if it's all right with you, I thought today we could talk about why values are so important and what could happen if we're not aware, conscious of our values, both for us personally, but very importantly for our businesses.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic, Becky. I did think you were actually going to say Monday morning you'd walked into the office and it was going to say working 9 to 5 and it set your week off on a bad tone. But no, you had something far better than that. So yeah, I think that's a great topic, and find out who you are and do it on purpose. Yeah, which is take the chance out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think we know that whether we have stated values written down, which we use or not, we have values, and the business has values, and people are kind of maybe aware of them because of the culture in the business. So it's there anyway. And then it's just, we're left like flotsam and jetsam, aren't we? We're just tossed around on the sea of values without actually having any control over it.
No, and generally they're intrinsic, aren't they? They've been honed over many, many years. So I think being conscious about them is so important. And also how we present them. So if we could sort of chat around that today, I think for me, sort of the areas that I'd really like to cover is what happens if you've not identified what your values are in your business, and how can that be detrimental to your business if you're not presenting what you should be, what you want to, both to your people and to your clients. And then I guess what's really important as well is how you then communicate your values. Once you've really ascertained what they are for your business, how do you communicate them? How do you sell that message to people? And I don't mean sell in terms of, really monetizing it, but actually building that culture, getting the right people to come to you. And then finally, I know you've got a great value setting process that you could sort of talk about in terms of that, how people could actually help themselves to understand those values.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they sound like three great points we can talk around and leave the listeners with some value. I think the other thing, Becky, which I always think when anyone talks about values, I think very often people talk about aspirations as well. And I think it's kind of important to recognize that your values and your business values are what they are. You said they're intrinsic. That's absolutely right, isn't it? I think sometimes people put aspirational values down, and I think that's a completely separate thing. I think you can want to get to somewhere through cultural change in your business, but that's a longer term process. It's pointless writing things down and having values which are aspirational if it's different on a day-to-day basis, because it's not congruent. Doesn't mean you can't move towards them, but maybe that's part of your vision setting, where you want to be as opposed to where you are today.
Yeah. And you've got to be authentic, haven't you? You've got to be able to live and breathe this stuff all the time, and you can't put a mask on and be something that you're not either. So of course we can all evolve and improve and grow, but fundamentally I think if we can understand what makes us tick, what makes the business tick, and how we are promoting ourselves, then we can absolutely get that message across. So what do you think happens if you don't get it right, though, in terms of business, if you're really not clear on what your values are as a business?
I think firstly it's probably worth saying that there are probably, and there will be, successful businesses out there who haven't formally documented down their values, and it's not woven through the fabric of how they do business. It still works. So this isn't saying it's something which, if you don't do it, is kind of massively detrimental to your business. I think it's becoming more detrimental. I think if I think back, 20 years ago, even at Larkin Gowan, we didn't have any written down values. And I was once asked to do the exercise. Oh, can you just write down what Larkin's values are, please, Mark? And I said, I can't. I said, I can write down what my values are, but I can't write down what the business values are until all 20 partners or whatever it was at the time have agreed what they are. So, and Larkin Gowan was we were a successful business 20 years ago. However, I think in the modern times, where it becomes really relevant is connecting to your people, internal and external. And if people don't know what you stand for and what is important to you and what you live and breathe, how can they make decisions about A, who they want to work for, or B, who they want to do business with? And I think that's why it's becoming even more relevant. And we've recently recorded an episode on Gen Z. I think for Gen Z, this stuff is really, really important, probably more so than other previous generations which have come through. And I think a good example in the modern world is ESG and sustainability. It's already headline stuff now. People are talking about it. It's in the news literally daily. This isn't just about business. This is mainstream society now. And if businesses are not able to eloquently articulate what their ESG values are, for example, then people are not going to be able to make conscious decisions about whether to do business with them, whether it be wanting to be employed by them or whether they want to spend their money with their products and services. So, what we have to be really careful with probably is that it doesn't, on that example, become, say, a greenwashing exercise. Because coming back to your point, Becky, around authenticity, if it's not congruent, if it's not authentic, people will see through it really quickly. So, just writing down bland statements just in the hope that it will tick some boxes, it's not going to work for very long before people see through it.
No, absolutely. Just stating it on your website and the hope that that's going to attract the right people to your business is not going to wash, is it? And it's just you've got to. People soon see through it, don't they? I completely agree with you. The Gen Z podcast that we did sort of explored that a bit more, didn't it? In terms of what people are looking for, and we know that as employers that people are looking for much more now from their roles in a firm, in a business, and they're really keen to understand what makes that business tick and what it's looking to achieve and where it's positioning itself in the community. And these things matter, don't they? A lot more than they ever probably have, which is why this stuff is now so much more relevant and really does need to be given some consideration.
Yeah, and we've done previous podcasts around the Great Resignation, so staff retention, staff attraction, and I think this is where it becomes really important. In most sectors we talk to, including our own, there's labour shortages in the UK, and it probably goes around several parts of certainly the Western world as well. So therefore, if we want to attract the right people, because it's not just about putting a bum on a seat. We want someone who's going to feel engaged in the business and they're going to hopefully stay for a period of time in the business because, whatever we all do for a living, there's a big investment when we take a new team member on. They have to be upskilled, they have to be trained. And to get a return on that investment, whatever that might mean for each business, normally it will entail that person staying around and hanging around for a period of time. And if it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly that there's a complete value misalignment, they're not going to hang around nowadays because they know that they can go to another job relatively easily and they can go somewhere where they're going to feel more at home. So I think society has changed, no doubt about it, over the last 20 years, but also the labour market has changed considerably. And that's why I think now, if you've not done it before, this kind of process, really, really understanding the core values of your business, it's just so important, if nothing else, to make sure you're getting the right people on the bus and they're going to hang around for a bit. And that's before we even get on to customers who are becoming more discerning with what they're looking at. I know myself, if I'm looking at products now with ingredients in, I'm looking for things like responsibly sourced palm oil if there's palm oil in a product, because I don't want to be part of something which is destroying biodiversity and the land in another country, for example. So I think we all do this subconsciously or consciously anyway. So for me, this is the point in time where it's never been more important.
And it's not going back to we want to attract the right people to work in our businesses. We absolutely do. And if we're clear on what our values are as a business, then we can also spot when someone's not right, can't we? So it's not just all on their terms, if you like. And I know, recruitment is challenging for a lot of businesses out there, certainly. But we need to see if someone's not the right fit for our business as well. And to do that, we need to be clear about what does the right person look like. And after a period of time, if they've not recognized that it's not a great fit, we need to be able to as well, because like you say, that investment, the longer it goes on, and it can have such a detrimental effect on the rest of the team as well. We've all seen examples of when a person's not the right fit. But if we're not clear about what we're almost benchmarking it against, what do we actually want in terms of our values, then how on earth can we expect anyone else to be?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we've given an example there around ESG, haven't we? That's a very clear one at the moment, which is in the news. But it's not just about, this is not about ESG and green and sustainability. This is about other things which are just really important in your business as well. Which are the non-negotiables. I think is what we're talking about, isn't it? Where what do you stand for? And a phrase which I've heard and used several times before is, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah,
And I think as businesses, we don't want to be falling. That there's enough difficulties out there operating businesses in the modern world anyway. So standing for something has got to put us in better stead.
definitely. And it comes back to that, as we said at the outset, about being conscious, and as Dolly Parton says, do it on purpose. It's not, you can't just
Mm,
hope this stuff is going to happen, can you? Or hope it will be seen and it will just filter through in what we do. You've got to be quite conscious and deliberate about it, really, to actually get
yeah.
that across to your people, haven't you? And and to your customers as well. Like you say, customers far more discerning now, far more informed, far more keen to understand what a business is about and what makes it tick before they were willing to engage with it often.
And as you were talking there, Becky, it made me think about Simon Simnick book, The Start With Why. And for those who haven't read it before, or seen the sort of concentric circles, I think they'd be called, wouldn't they? We'll put a
Mm,
link in the show notes. But it's like he very much talks about the what, the how, and the why. And it's very easy for businesses to say, all of us, it's easy to say what we do. It's easy to say how we do it, but it's the why we do it. And that's really at the heart of the value setting process, isn't it? Why are we doing it? What's getting us out of bed? What
yeah,
what do we want other people to get out of bed for as well? So I think, if when you're thinking about this as well, and we'll come on to this later, but it is that what and how, that doesn't go deep enough
no,
nowadays. It's got to be the why,
yeah.
because that is the bit which helps people align with your brand.
And again, this fits really nicely with the podcast that we recorded last week with the guest about personal brand as well, isn't it? Because if you're clear with people about your why, they'll really engage with that, and they will connect with you as an individual as well. Which that's all about. You're then able to promote your business and build those relationships, which will gain you business as well. So it's so important to align the personal with the corporate brand in that sense, in terms of you're living and breathing it every day.
So hopefully we've done a pretty good sales pitch there for people, Becky, on why it's so important to understand your values and be consciously aware of them for you, for your customers, and for your team and your future team as well, and for you, for clarity as the business leader and owner as well, potentially.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. But then what that leads on to is possibly, I don't know, is it as challenging as understanding what your values are? How do you communicate it? How every day, day in, day out, do you keep that messaging going and it's authentic and people get it? That's what we stand for around here. So, can we just chat about how we've done that in our business, perhaps, in terms of how we've got that message it through
Mm.
everything that we do, and maybe our listeners could take something from that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think we can talk about bad examples we've seen with other businesses as well.
Yeah.
And even our own business. Years ago, I think if I reference it back to that sort of 20-year ago period, when we eventually came up with, and when we did this process within LG, like and Gowan, just to be clear, not the electrical brand, we had, I actually led that exercise myself, and I've refined it since then because it was too complicated. I look at it now and I made it too complicated. It made it difficult to do it with 20 partners around the table, but we used the Edward de Bono, I think it was called the value medals system. So I scribbled away and read this book on how to set values, and it was a bit complicated, and it kind of, yeah, it was hard yards. But out of the back of that, we came up at the time with the 6 core values,
Mm.
and I think at that point it was almost like, oh, job done. If we put it on a piece of paper and laminate it and stick it on some notice boards, and maybe just kind of occasionally, I don't know, put it on a mouse mat or something, that was almost, but that was not uncommon years and years ago in
No.
business. A lot of businesses did that. It wasn't sophisticated. It was like stuck on the notice board beside the coffee machine, show the core values, and at least it was something. But now I think we've evolved beyond that, not only as our business, but generally as a society and businesses. And we need to integrate it and weave it into the fabric of our business rather than just having it on a notice board or in the toilets or wherever it might have been.
I remember those 6 values, and whilst, they were all valid in their own way, it always almost became a test, didn't it? Of can you tell us what the 6 values are? And you'd be like, oh,
Mm,
I've been put on the spot. And it needs to be so intrinsic that it's just there. It's part of what you do. It's part of your language every day, and it doesn't feel false and clunky and like you're just reciting something, does it? It needs to be, this is what we do. This is how we live
mm.
and breathe it around here. And so we've woven it in lots of ways, haven't we? Certainly it's an integral part of our appraisal process that our teams say how they believe they've met the values of the firm, which, about great client service and being committed to our people. So it's how have they achieved those? It's part of our rewards process in terms of, when we ask for suggestions and things like that, isn't it? It's about how does that link back to our values. So it's that constant theme, I think, which means it actually, means something.
Yeah, and I always think, this should very much be a top down process. The senior leadership, whatever that might mean in any organisation, has to be seen to live and breathe this. Because
Yeah.
if the senior leadership team aren't doing it, it basically says we don't believe in this. And if we don't believe in it, then they can't be the core values.
Yeah.
So I think, we have to take responsibility for this as senior people, and then that starts to build the credibility of it as well. And the other thing it should really help with as a senior decision maker is value should help guide your decision making process as well. So
Mm.
every decision which comes up, we're not talking about 20 core values here. We're talking, most businesses, just a handful at most, the things what really, really matter. So every time a business decision comes up, we should be able to ask ourselves, does it fit? What would our core values dictate we should do here? And for example, ours as a business, it's committed to people, and committed to client service. There are
Mm.
two core values, and everything we're doing should be asking ourselves, does it align with this, and does it further them as well? Does it
Yeah.
make the business better by living those core values? And if it doesn't feel right, then it means it's not the right decision. So that it
Mm.
should really, done well, it should really help as part of a decision making process as well.
Yeah, it can be like that check, can't it? Sort of that,
Mm,
if it reflected back on you, actually, does this fit with what we've stated we're going to do and what we believe in? Is this the right thing for us as a business? And I think that is seen by people both internally and externally, isn't it? And that's
yeah,
so important. And it's not about having it on a, poster on the wall. It is about actually doing it and going those living and breathing it, as we said. But it's got to come from the top. You can't have anyone that deviates really in terms of or undermines it at any point, because that's so damaging, isn't it?
and if people are, then probably the question they should ask themselves is, am I at
Are
the
they in the
right
right
place here?
place? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Or if you're a senior person, you should be asking, are they in the right place? If you're seeing it as a consistent behavior pattern. So yeah, I think once this, as you say, this has to be weaved into the fabric of the business, and it's not just the 20 years ago a list of values stuck up on a laminated sheet on the board. Now we have to be, if we're going to live and breathe this, we've got to weave it through the fabric of how we do business. It's got to be present everywhere. And a great example in our business, Becky, when Julie, our managing partner, addressed the whole firm on a webinar recently and previously as well. Julie is always referring decision making in the business, the big stuff to the team, back to our core values. It's
mm,
always aligned back to it, which I think is, that's ultimate reinforcement from, if you like, the managing partner of our business. When addressing the team, it just reinforces it and it just brings home that, hey, this, we live and breathe this. This is, doesn't mean we get it right all the while, but it's our yardstick. We're measuring against it all
yeah,
the while in whatever measurement might mean.
yeah. And if you share that with the team and you're open and honest about it, and like you say, this is always referred to. That's the vision, isn't it? And then you're on the same path. Everyone's clear about the why, and that's so important, isn't it? That to understand that why,
Mm.
as you said. So completely agree that it's just the constant referencing, and if you intrinsically believe it, then it won't be difficult, will it? It will just come out naturally anyway, because like we said at the beginning, being authentic, and actually you can't put a face on with this stuff, because it will
Mm.
slip in those moments of stress, or just not being conscious about how you're behaving. People will see through it otherwise. So, Mark, we've talked about how it's really important to understand your values, and also how you can, constantly get that messaging through and live and breathe it. So, what about for our listeners if they're not sure about how to go about really understanding what their values are as a business, and how to nail those down so that they have clarity that they can then really communicate well to their people?
Yeah, well, I think before we recorded, Becky, we were talking about this, and I think you've got a great example of something you went through. So we'll definitely draw that out as well to bring it to life. I referenced earlier when I was part of the initial Larkingown value setting process, and I'd used Edward de Bono's the Value Medal System, I think it was called. The book is still available, and it is a good book. So people can always have a look at that if they want to look at how to do a value setting process within their business. As I say, we probably, with hindsight, found it maybe a bit too much at the beginning of the process. It
Mm.
was too sophisticated for us. So off the back of that, as part of my business advisory services that I deliver for Larkingown to other clients, I'd started to look at, okay, how can I simplify this down for people who haven't maybe got it formally documented, they haven't really gone through the thought process. How can I run a workshop with them which simplifies it, but they get great value and they've got somewhere to start with the whole process. So
Mm.
that's what I've done. And fundamentally it's kind of just three simple steps that I take the clients through. And normally at this point it would be senior management in the room. It wouldn't be the whole business. It would be the senior teams. And the first thing I get them to do individually is to write down all of their personal values and beliefs that are important to them. What are the really, really important things to them as an individual? So we go through that process. At this point, no one's allowed to look. They have to cover their work like you're at school doing an exam, so no one cheats. And they have a bit of time just to think about it. You shouldn't need too much time because this stuff should be fairly intuitive. You can overthink it, and it's trying to articulate it down. Just get it written down, whatever it might mean. It could be single words, it could be short sentences, however you want to articulate and get it out and get onto a piece of paper. So that's sort of stage one that we go through. The next stage is then to get them working in small groups where they then start to write down what they see on the ground as if you like, the core values and beliefs of the business. So what they see manifesting itself on a day-to-day basis in their business. Because the two at this point can be very different,
Yeah.
and you'll talk about your experience shortly with that. So at this point, we've gone through the exercise of writing down what they believe as individuals. We've gone through the exercise of writing down of what they see coming out of the business. So what they believe are the values and beliefs of the organization. And then at that point, we effectively just map the two across to each other. And we're looking, okay, so where have we got similarity? Where have we got significant difference as well?
Mm.
But where have we generally got commonality amongst the leadership team and the business? And at that point, we can then start to say, okay, we can see what some of the core values and beliefs of the business and the individuals who set that within the business, if you like, anyway, what they are. And when we can start to build the value proposition around it, how are we going to, what are they going to be? How are we going to word it? Is it going to be a single word? Is it going to be a word with a short paragraph explaining this is what the value really is and how it's lived and breathed in our business? And at that point, we can then go into the second point we were discussing, which is once we've got alignment and agreement, we can then start a process of mapping out and how we're going to roll this out and deliver it through the business, so we can start to measure it and manage it, and live and breathe it properly and not leave it to chance. So that when I've done that with clients, it always gets refined over the years. This is not the finished position, but
Yeah.
it's a great starting point just to get it down and make sure it's aligned. And also, importantly as well, and I've seen this within senior management teams as well, find out that actually some of the senior management team are completely not aligned with where the business is, and
Yeah.
it's not where they want to go either. So it can be quite a challenging exercise to do, because it can show some fractures and crack lines within a business as well, or certainly the people within the business.
Yeah. It can be a bit of a light bulb moment, can't it, for some people, because they've actually taken that time to think about this stuff and how it fits with the business or not, as the case may be. So you mentioned there the training, the process that I experienced a few years ago now, about 8 years ago, when I was first a partner, and I was on a leadership diploma and leadership course with our institute, and it was very similar to what you've just described in terms of the first stage, understanding what your own values are, your personal values. And it was literally a pile of cards, I don't know how many, over 100, with single words written on them, and you had to literally make an instant decision of yes, no, that really resonates, no it doesn't. And then the pile of yeses, you again then kept trimming it down until you got down to maybe 5, 10. And it really made you focus and hone in on what those key words are for you that would really resonate with you in terms of your value. So for me is integrity. So straight away that was an absolute yes, but if you had to think about it too long, then that was probably a no. But what was key for me was you then think about how your values align with the business that you're in. And fortunately for me, it was positive, but there were some people in the room that had some real challenging realizations at that point, real light bulb moments of going, I don't know if where I want to be or where I should be or can sustain this, because this isn't true to who I am. When you're in that context and you're given the space to actually think about it, and the conversations in the room are around it, and it's a safe place as much as anything, that really enabled them to assess whether it was where they would choose to be in the long term. And I think that's really important. It was very, very enlightening for me in refining them as much as anything. But a very simple exercise, very effective.
Mm,
And I would thoroughly recommend it to anyone. But just picking up
yeah.
on the other point that you made in terms of you then need to expand it and explain it to people, because those terms don't mean the same things to everyone, do they? So when you're relating it to the business, you do need to be clear to help people to get on board with it, to run with it, to really engage with it, and make sure that they understand where you're coming from with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that is a really good point, well made there, Becky. I think it is very much around understanding what the word, if it is a word, might mean in the context of the business. Because I think, like you say, integrity could mean different things to different people. The classic one is honest. People put honesty down.
Mm.
And it's like, what does that actually mean? Because
Yeah.
I suspect, apart from maybe a few people in the world, most people, and I'm going to go out and say 99% of people in the world have told a white lie. you know so does that mean they're dishonest? So it's almost like,
Oh,
where are the boundaries with some of these words? What do
yeah.
they mean? Just having a load of words doesn't probably get you very far
No.
until you can put some parameters around what it actually means in terms of day-to-day operation.
Yeah. And it can't be to the detriment of the business, can it, either, in terms of you can't take it to such an extreme, and people's understanding of a particular term may be that they, completely move away from what the aim of the business is in terms of, being profitable, whatever it is. You can't take it to an absolute extreme, but what you can do is understand whether enough of what you believe in fits with enough of what the business believes in,
Hmm.
and that you are aligned, and are you really comfortable with where you are and where it's going. Because if we all wanted to live by our values day in day out in business, then that some of us probably wouldn't be as successful as we are in terms of actually driving the business forwards, because there's lots of things that we would like to do that it's just not practical, is it? But if
Hmm.
fundamentally your core values you can live by, then I think that's the important thing. So, Mark, I think we can sum up there with our three key points for our listeners, in terms of why values are important, and what really could happen if we're not conscious about our own values and living and breathing them through our business. So, the first point we discussed there was what could happen in our business if we haven't identified what the values are, both in terms of our recruitment, our customers, our engagement, both internally and externally. Because we all know that anyone we might want to recruit or indeed do business with, they're all making choices all of the time, and we really need to make sure that we are presenting ourselves, what we're about, and why we want to engage with them in the right way, and really promoting that. The second point we talked about leads on from that nicely. How do we communicate our values once we've really got to the bottom of what they are? And we need to make it an integral part of our business. We were saying about how we really do need to live and breathe it. Needs to come from the top. We can't, just say these things and hope that it's going to happen. It's all part of the culture, isn't it? And how we do things around here is that classic phrase. And then the third point we talked around was really, how do you do this? How do you identify what your values are and make sure that your senior leadership team, the individual values really are aligned with the business, and help people to understand that, go through that process. And you talked us there through a great simple process, which you've refined over the years, certainly, in terms of how you could work with a team to do that. And then, I gave the example of how I did it individually in a group context, but I think yours doing it as a team and then aligning it with the business could be such value to our listeners.
Yeah, I think there are three big points we've pulled out today, Becky, and there's hopefully some value for the listeners to be able to go away and do something, or at least if they're not doing it, consider it. If they are already doing it, maybe refine their processes and kind of keep it as a living, breathing thing.
Yeah, definitely. Again, be conscious about it and really how you're promoting it, isn't it? So that brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on your chosen platform, Spotify, Apple, whatever that may be, and rate us 5 stars. That really helps other people to find us. You'll find links in the show notes to everything we've been talking about today, anything we've referenced, including the website of our sponsors, Larkin Gowan, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. We could not do this without them, so thank you to them. If you go on their website, you can find out more about how their team can help you and your business. And it just leaves us to say, as ever, be kind to yourself and make sure you boost your health, wealth and self.